Hi, good evening, folks. This is Kurt. I'm gonna give you kind of a breakdown of what we're doing this week in class. This week, of course, we're gonna cover American Gods, but the following week we've got our presentations, and I know that a number of you had some concerns about, particularly if you missed the first day or first couple of days of class, you might be wondering, well, what exactly is the hero's journey, and how am I going to chart or plot a work of literature on the hero's journey in a presentation? So what I'm going to do here in this video is I'm going to do a very rudimentary, very no nonsense version of it, and I hope that after watching this video and after hopefully we discuss it in class on Monday, that you'll be like, I can do this, I can do better than this, I can do 20 times better than this with far less effort than he's putting into it. Actually, I'm not putting a whole lot of effort into it, as you can probably plainly see. So, what I'm asking you to do, if you remember from the discussions in class, I have not posted the specific assignment description the assignment description's in the course syllabus, but I have not posted the assignment link yet. So, but what I've asked you to do, if you recall, is either a video, as I'm doing here, or a Prezi or PowerPoint presentation consisting of approximately 12 slides, give or take, to represent the 12 commonly held points on the hero's journey. And these points are described in different terms. And if you're in class on Monday, or you look at Blackboard, you'll be able to see I'm going to add a link in for the hero's journey as plotted out by the folks at thewritersjourney.com, and it's fairly detailed yet easily accessible. And I'm using their image here of the hero's journey. I'm going to flip the camera around. Hopefully, this image gets into the frame. But this is the hero's journey that I'm looking at, the model. And as you can see, I've got Master Yoda here next to my tablet, because what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to talk to you about the hero's journey of Star Wars, specifically of Star Wars The New Hope. Now, some of you may be like, well, man, I wanted to do Star Wars, and he's kind of taken my show away. Well, the great thing about fantastic, mythic journeys, either inward or outward journeys that we've looked at through the course of the term, is that there's more than one way to chart each and every one of them. There's more than one way to look at, say, the hero's journey in the Odyssey. There's more than one way to look at the hero's journey in Gilgamesh. There's more than one way to look at. There's probably 20 different ways easily to look at the hero's journey in American Gods, which is what we'll be going over this week in class. In essence, though, I'm going to talk to you about Star Wars A New Hope, and I don't have a whole lot of visuals here, because I'm just kind of throwing you together the trajectory of what a presentation should encompass. Hopefully, you've got more visuals than I've got here, but I'm not asking you to win an Academy Award or anything like that, certainly not, because, of course, my philosophy is that I don't expect you to be able to do something that I can't do. So, I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel or anything of that nature, but in any case, I'm going to start talking about the hero's journey as referenced or as demonstrated by Star Wars A New Hope. And yes, film is literature, particularly film, well, in my view, it is, and for the purpose of our survey class, certainly. But again, if you're going to conquer something, outside of the realm of what we covered in class, you're going to want to talk to me to get pre-approval on it. Also, I did say for this last project, again, to be presented in class, the final 2 days of class, you can work in groups. I realize that we haven't had a whole lot of as much back and forth discussion within the class as I would have liked, or probably you would have liked in the term. We tried to put a lot in our 5 weeks, and anyway. But I would encourage you, if you want to work with somebody else, particularly this week, talk to the people in the class. See if you've got some people that you can vibe with, that you have similar interests, that you have similar views on these works about. Incidentally, this is my wheelchair behind me. I'm not actually sitting in my wheelchair. Most of you probably never seen that. But anyway, all right. This is about as scripted as one of our classes, as you can see. But anyway, beginning with our discussion of Star Wars here 7 minutes into this video. So, as we talked about, and as you saw in the Joseph Campbell video that we looked at the first day of class, Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey was a very, very strong influence on George Lucas and on the content of Star Wars. And remember that the hero's journey is, or the theory behind it, I should say, is that what the hero is doing in the outer world, in the hero's narrative, I should say, in the inner world, outer world, so on and so forth, throughout the hero's various adventures, is basically appealing to us as human beings, because we in our own lives take on these various journeys inwardly and sometimes outwardly, but we're able to identify with the struggles of the hero and the victories of the hero and so on and so forth. So the hero that I'm going to talk about primarily, of course, is our little farm boy, Luke Skywalker, in Star Wars A New Hope. So in the very beginning of the story, if you remember, he's kind of a whiny, annoying guy that is not really all that sympathetic. If you look at him, he whines at his uncle that he can't go to Bocce Station, and he's just this whiny kid in essence, and he's just really restless, which a lot of us can identify with that, because a lot of us have been restless many times in our lives. Maybe you all were restless when you were trying to figure out, hey, what university am I going to attend? Where am I going to go with my life? So Luke is kind of in that position, but he's really, really whiny. He's like a sort of a stereotype of a whiny Caucasian guy. I can say that because I am in some ways a whiny Caucasian guy, or have been at various points in my life. But in any case, you see this very important scene at the beginning of the film. He's looking out over the horizon of Tatooine, and he's surveying the desert, and you see the two suns, and believe it or not, the two suns setting, and believe it or not, in 1977, that was a big deal. For those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, that actually was considered impressive tech at the time. But in any case, what we've got is we've got him looking over the desert, and his life has become a desert, right? Because he's not allowed to express his creativity, his inner artistic self, right? His inner genius. He's stifled, right? So that's represented by that desert, and that's where we begin our story with Luke. So he receives the call to adventure, in essence, when he meets the droids, and he's trying to clean up R2-D2, and he sees the video, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," right? So, which is his sister, but he doesn't realize, okay, y'all have seen the film. Incidentally, there's this cultural movement going on now. If you look at social media, my princesses became generals because, of course, Leia is now a general in the current Star Wars films, and Robin Wright, who was the general in, who was the princess in Princess Bride, is now the general in Wonder Woman. And I highly recommend Wonder Woman if you have not seen it. In any case, that's just an interesting aside. But anyway, so he tries to figure out who this Ben Kenobi is. That's his initial call to adventure. And again, some of these points on the wheel of the hero's journey of this, they're kind of malleable. They're kind of interchangeable, so that it's not exactly going to fit. Okay, this happens, then this must happen, then this must happen. It can be shifted around because human narrative, human life is like that. It's not a straight line. It's not point A, point B, point C, and then you die. Although a number of people would like to put it in little self-contained, stackable containers like that. Most of us know that it just doesn't work that way. Even though, we'd probably like it in some ways if it were more predictable. But in any case, that's when Luke, his world is interrupted. He's looking at something other than, I want to go shoot womp raps with my buddies and potentially, enroll in the Imperial Academy just to get the hell out of this planet that is nothing but desert. So they go out and they try to, and they find, and he encounters Ben Kenobi, and this is actually when he receives this direct call to adventure, because Ben Kenobi says to him, "Hey, you must come with me to Alderaan." He says, "I can't go with you to Alderaan," right? That's one of their first exchanges. This is also step 3 on the wheel, if you will, on the hero's journey. The monomythic journey is the mentor, right? But Luke is getting the mentor and the call to adventure simultaneously. Again, this doesn't have to go in a straight line. It can overlap. Certain events can signify more than one point on the journey. Because when you're looking at a circle, I should say, you're looking at a two-dimensional object. When you're looking at the human experience, it's anything but two-dimensional, right? So, in any case, they go back to Luke. Luke refuses the call. That's the second point, is refusing the call. So he's like, "I can't go with you to Alderaan," right? So they go back to Uncle Owen and Aunt Veru's place, and what happens? The stormtroopers have raided their place, and they're dead, right? So this is incidentally probably the most successful raid done by stormtroopers in the history of the Star Wars franchise. But in any case, they're dead, and so at that point, Luke says, "Okay, I'm going to go with you to Alderaan," right? So then they go over to, actually Step 4 is the mentor. Step 3 was the refusal of the call. So step 4 and step 1 in our case, or step 2 in our case, basically it's kind of intertwining, right? He's already got Ben Kenobi at this point. So this is Joseph Campbell calls the next scene his favorite in Star Wars, which is the cantina scene, right? That's like the iconic Star Wars scene. But at this point, Luke knows that he is not in Kansas anymore, to use a cliche. He's crossing a threshold into the unknown. In other words, everything that he knew up to this point, he can't necessarily count on anymore. He doesn't know whether certain movements, certain gestures, certain words mean what he assumes they mean, right? Because he's never been in this environment. He's hearing language, okay, that he's never heard before. This is, and when we're talking about literary theory and so forth, this is a very good, looking at that scene, is a very good demonstration or example of the whole postmodern idea that meaning is not static, right? That meaning is constantly shifting. So anyway, that's where they are at that point, is the crossing of the threshold. So next, he's going to meet some allies. He's going to meet my favorite folks, right? Chewbacca and Han Solo. And Chewbacca, of course, we've been looking throughout the term at, we saw Enkidu in Gilgamesh. We saw Hanuman in the Ramayana. We did not, because of my screw up, we did not look at Sun Wukong in Journey to the West. But Chewbacca very much is that type of character. He's the big hairy sidekick, right? And so I just love seeing Chewbacca, and very, very purposefully, Han Solo is Clint Eastwood. Han Solo is the bad boy that everybody loves. He's the gunfighter with no name in the Sergio Leone movies. In fact, the scene where he shoots Greedo is taken almost verbatim out of Good, Bad, and the Ugly. So and this is all very much on purpose on Lucas's part, because he's trying to get his viewers to identify archetypally with these characters. So he gets these allies, and I apologize for my very amateurish camera work here. Then they're going to approach. They're calling the next part, the part 7. Okay, they're calling this the diagram that I'm looking at. Again, they're different iterations of the monomythic diagram, but the one that I'm looking at calls it the approach. And literally, in the film, if anything literal happens in the film, but as far as the plot of the film is concerned, they approach the Death Star, and they actually go into, they hit a asteroid field, and right where Alderaan's supposed to be, and there's that exchange. That looks like a moon. That's no moon. I have a bad feeling about this, right? The motto of Star Wars. I have, of all the Star Wars characters at some point say those lines. That line. I have a bad feeling about this. So in place of Alderaan, they approach the Death Star, and again, archetypally speaking, you have the destruction of a beautiful planet. Beauty, remember we talked about green, verdant growth, etc. That's indicative of creativity, right? Like the Garden of Eden. Remember, we looked at the Genesis, creativity, potential, and so on. So that's been destroyed, right? The Death Star blew that up. And in place of that, what we have is we have a mechanized copy or I should say replacement, or a better word is escaping me right now. See, I don't script anything any of my videos. If you watch any of my other videos, I don't script anything. I just kind of let it come off the cuff. But so we have kind of a doppelganger. That's better. Doppelganger of a planetary body in this place in the image of the Death Star. And when you're talking about something that is mechanized, you're talking about something that is soulless, you're talking about something that, again, is devoid of soul or creativity. So that's what they're approaching. And they approach in different iterations of the hero's journey, or the monomythic cycle, will have, going into the belly of the beast and these kinds of things, the Jonah and the whale, and so forth. And this happens actually when they go in the Death Star, when the heroes make their way into the garbage chute and almost get crushed to death. And they see that this sort of sea creature that wraps around their legs and pulls them under. This is going into the belly of the beast, if you will, or the whale. The idea of the unknown, the idea of I have no idea what's going to happen next. Pretty much given up all hope. All that we've assumed to this point is kind of on the line. But of course, the hero gets out of that. The hero brings out of that a new perspective. So, in this version that I'm looking at, this would be the eighth point on and this is directly at the bottom of the circle, is the ordeal, death, and rebirth. So this is the whole cycle that occurs inside the Death Star itself, in terms of the film. They're going into the garbage scale thing. You have a literal death with the death of Ben Kenobi. You have a rebirth, a tiny rebirth, in the sense that at the end he says, "Run, Luke, run!" "Run, Luke, run!" After he's already been destroyed. They have a small victory, of course, when the tractor beam is down and so forth, and you get a rebirth in the sense, of course, we don't know this in the first film, but you get a rebirth in the sense that you have the reuniting of Luke and Leia. You have the meeting of Leia and Han Solo. You have the iconic kiss between Leia and Luke on the tether, across the bridge. That's really controversial because if we find out in the later films, they're brother and sister. In essence, the reason that Lucas did that, or the explanation that he gives now, or that mythologists give now, is that Luke and Leia kiss because it's a reference to Isis and Osiris, or the brother and sister hero gods, and so forth, who are consorts. Anyway, there's a much more practical explanation if you read on Star Wars lore, that Lucas did not plan on Luke and Leia being brother and sister at the time of the filming of the first movie. That kind of developed as they went along. But in any case, it's there. So, and then of course the ordeal culminates, right, in the returning of the returning to the Death Star and trying to destroy it. And of course, this is a great battle. You have poor Porkins that's flying along in his X-wing, bouncing on there. Big fat dude, probably even fatter than I am, right? And if this were realistic, if it were actually a realistic film, they would not let this fat dude, pilot a spacecraft, a fighter in any case, right? But the fat dude want you. So, but in any case, he gets killed. Everybody gets killed except Wedge and Luke, pretty much. And then, of course, Han Solo comes and kind of knocks Darth Vader out of the way and saves the day there at the end. And Luke is allowed then to shoot the torpedo into the exhaust port and blow up the Death Star. And he does so by relying on his inner self, right? He's relying on that which is irreducibly not understandable, that which is that jouissance, to quote Jacques Lacan, or spirit, or any number of things that you want to say, but it's an act of faith. It's an act of faith, and in that instance, it's like in The Tempest when Prospero says, that in essence that mercy is rarer than vengeance, right? And that in Prospero chooses mercy over vengeance. And Luke is choosing instinct, heart, over all these fantastic, targeting systems and so on and so forth that they have. In other words, most people would think he was entirely nuts. And in fact, they ask him, Luke, is there something wrong with your targeting computer? And so on. But no, he trusts his feelings, trusts your feelings, right? So, and that's what allows him ultimately, that shows that he has gone from this really whiny white farm boy, to a hero, right? Someone who exists both within society and without, who has special knowledge or special experience, right? Then, of course, next on so this would be reward, seeking the sword, etc., etc. So next is the road back. Star Wars kind of, because it is one of the New Hope, in any case, is the 2-hour film. So they kind of collapse a lot of this stuff, but in essence, they go. That's kind of glossed over, right? You have a resurrection, not necessarily of Luke, but of Ben Kenobi, in the sense that he's telling Luke to use the Force as Luke is shooting the torpedo. You have a resurrection of Luke, though, in a sense too, because he, in using the Force in that way, if you will, he's accepting his Jedi heritage, right? He's accepting that there's more to him than what he thought, right? You definitely have a resurrection in the case of Han Solo, because at that point, when Han Solo comes back, Han and Chewbacca show back up for that final battle, it's the Battle of Yavin, if you are a Star Wars geek. When they show back up for the Battle of Yavin, or Yavin, however it is, it's said, and he shoots Darth Vader's TIE fighter and knocks it off course and everything. He's making a clear decision at that point. That he is going to be not the self-serving, greedy mercenary, but the selfless hero, and ultimately that's who he becomes. And So then we have Return with the Elixir, which is the final step. And I actually like the very last scene in Star Wars. Although it was in George Lucas's contract that he could do the sequels, obviously, nobody knew how successful Star Wars was going to be. So he had to encapsulate the whole hero's journey in the first one, even if he didn't get to make the entire trilogy, which ultimately does a much has this journey in it over and over, and then ultimately the whole thing, the whole first three films, is the story or the narrative, the hero's journey of the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. But the last scene in the first one is fantastically done from the perspective of somebody looking at it from something like the hero's journey, because all of a sudden, they're on this verdant green world, and they all get medals, with the exception of, if I remember correctly, with the exception of Chewbacca and with the exception of the droids, which I really think is kind of racist. But in any case, hey, it was 1977. So in any case, that is my very haphazard explanation of the hero's journey as it applies to Star Wars: A New Hope. Now, I've gone on here for 32 minutes. I'm not expecting you at all to do a 32-minute video. If you do a 5-minute video that encompasses all of what you want to say, I am fine with that. Again, I'm probably going to be showing this in class Monday, so it's basically going to give us some talking points to talk about the presentations, to talk about basically the remainder of class. And remember that you have your essays, your literary essays that we've been talking about in class, due on Thursday. There's examples on Blackboard right now. The assignment description itself is up. Also, Monday and Monday, probably we'll be able to get this done Monday, but Monday and Tuesday we have the conferences as well. Just, you're going to briefly, one-on-one, talk to me 3 to 5 minutes. Hey, how's the class going for you? How are you doing on your essay? What are you planning? What are you thinking about doing on your presentation? Do you need any direction? So on and so forth. That's, in essence, just a way for you to get some quick and easy points. Again, half of the points for the term comes from your reading journal. So remember, I'm asking you to come up with 25 questions that are journalistic in nature and promote your own critical thinking. So the idea is that you've come up with these questions as you've been reading through the works throughout the semester, and as you're reading, you're also answering your own questions, so that hopefully you've got not only a knowledge base, but you're thinking about these works multidimensionally. And at the very least, hopefully you've been able to glean a strong potential essay topic. And I know that few of you, it was only 10 students with us for this summer, right? But I know a few of you have already talked to me a couple of times about what you're doing with your essays, and it's frankly fairly impressive, particularly for a 5-week survey course in the summertime, right? So anyway, I'm going to end now because I know you're tired of hearing me. You're tired of looking at this shoddily made video. But just as always, I mean, you're probably watching this in class with me right there in the classroom with you, but if this presentation in some way brings up some ideas, some thoughts, some questions, please address this in class, or please talk to me, send me an email, so on and so forth. All right, I will see everyone in class on Monday. Have a great evening.